Hi, I'm Jason Inman.
And I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And we just came back from the Speed Force to give you a recap and review of The Flash, Season 3, Episode 11, Dead or Alive. Dead or Alive. And if you haven't run through the Speed Force to watch this episode, you might want to come back later because there's going to be lots of spoilers. The episode starts with crooks who have a super fancy gun, and the Flash shows up and he dodges the bullet, and then we learn that HR is telling the story. HR is telling the story of him being a hero with a vortex cannon, and then we flash out to find out that HR is writing his novel. Then we see the real fight. Both Flashes, Kid Flash and Flash, chase down the Electric Gang, and Kid Flash forces them off the road, and then he gets a cool selfie with some cheerleaders. We go back to Star Labs, and we find out that Iris is still a journalist, shocker, and she's tracking down guns while Julian complains. Cisco reveals they have a way to map the future, and he shows his fun Lego model. Yes, he built that out of 7,000 Legos or something like that. He finds out that Barry has to cover a certain distance from him to Savitar in less than 0.21 seconds, and Julian reveals with a graph that it is completely impossible for Barry. We then see Gypsy breaking into CC Jitters and shows that she has vibe powers and that she can sense H.R. Wells anywhere in the universe because of his coffee taste. Okay, let's go through this. Let's talk about this. We get a really cool scene in the beginning. Flash, Kid Flash. I thought it was really cool seeing them chasing them down, but we get a lot of HR-infused character in that. And then also, this is the first time that we get to see Julian acting as part of Team Flash, seeing the components that he's going to bring. He's kind of dour. He's very literal. He's very logical. What do we think about that? Also, what do we think that there's now a model in Star Labs of how Iris is going to die, made out of Legos?
I have a couple different thoughts, conflicting thoughts about this. I really like Tom Felton. I think he's a great actor. I think he's one of the better actors on the show. I think he's one of the better actors of the Star Labs, Scooby Gang, Barry Allen Pier group of people. Mm-hmm. So I enjoy him from that perspective, but I think he's living in the real world, and they're all living in the Flash world, which is a little bit shinier than the real world. So I feel
it is very Central City is very shiny.
It is very clean. Thank you, Vancouver.
Thank you, the Flash. He runs around picking up trash.
I hope that would be awesome if he just went around and picked up litter. I'd be down for that.
Wouldn't you?
That would be super.
You have all the time in the world.
Totally. So I feel like there's a disconnect between what his character is doing and what everyone else is doing, but I like that he balances out Caitlin and Barry's sort of high energy. Yeah. So I think it's a little bit weird, but I'm on board for it. Yeah. I'm not a Lego person, so I thought that.
Well, they didn't call it Legos either, but it's Legos.
It's Lego. It's minifigs and everything. I feel like it's definitely a move that you do to pander to your audience because Lego is very big in geek culture.
I thought it was funny. I really thought the joke was funny when Barry picked up his figure and was like, "Why am I the red astronaut?" I actually really thought that was very funny.
I actually appreciated though that. Julian is the one who brings it back to the real world.
He shows the graph of his speed increases.
Yeah. So I didn't like the Lego. Again, I think it was like the Domino's last episode. I thought it was a belabored metaphor that we didn't need.
Got it.
Sorry.
Next, we see Joe at a crime scene calling both of his sons his superhero boys, and then he wants Barry to tell Iris to back off on this weird gun story that she's all about. Gypsy comes to Star Labs. She calls out H.R. Wells, and H.R. describes her as a collector. She vibes inside Star Labs, shoots him, and then Vibe hits her with his powers, and she's impressed that Cisco can also vibe. But then she portals his ass and pones him real good. Kid Flash shows up, and Gypsy shows with her vibe powers how she is able to stop his speed. Gypsy says that from their Earth, they have struck a law that there can be no multiverse travel, and HR has to come back with her. We find out that HR has been broadcasting himself back through the multiverse, telling all of the Flash's adventures where he is the protagonist. And he reveals that breach travel is a death sentence because he reveals that his Earth was once invaded by another Earth. Julian proposes the idea that maybe HR going back to his Earth changes the Iris death future. Wally and Iris talk about running in super speed, and Iris tries to convince Wally to help her with the gun story. She's really about this gun story for some reason in this episode. And then we see HR packing. He's going to go back to his Earth, and he reveals that he's going to miss soap operas. And he says that the reason he came to this Earth is because he didn't matter on his Earth, but he says that, hey, they could apply for a trial by combat. They all confront Gypsy, and Cisco challenges her to a trial by combat, and then he asks her out for dinner. He says, do you want to go dinner by combat, maybe? And then he finds out that he gets 24 hours to prepare for the giant battle that is going to happen. Now, Let's talk about this.
Okay.
First off, let's talk about some of the cool things. Again, one of the best things that they have done this season is distinguishing HR's Earth 19, from our Earth. So this is an Earth that has experienced an invasion from another Earth. Think about how that would change your Earth. And also, it also seems like it's an Earth that is not afraid of superpowers like the way this Earth Prime is, the Earth Prime of the Flash show. They're a little bit afraid, even though they're opening more and more. The superheroics are still like in the shadows.
Yeah.
They're in the shadows. Well, what'd you think about Gypsy? Learning a little bit more about Gypsy, and also seeing that she can stop speed powers.
I think Gypsy was really, really cool, and I think Jessica Camacho, who played her, did an
good call on the name.
Thank you. She did an excellent job, because Gypsy, to me, is kind of a silly character from the comic.
She is. Let's bring a little bit of Easter eggs here. Gypsy and Vibe, who is Cisco's character, they are kind of goofier characters from the Justice League Detroit area, and that's the era when, the Justice League was based in Detroit, and I believe it was led by either Martian Manhunter or Aquaman.
It was led by Aquaman.
Yeah.
But fun fact, if you want to do like some crossover with this character, she was a member of the Birds of Prey, and when she was on the Birds of Prey, she had the black costume like we see her. Traditionally, she has literally like a gypsy dress on.
Yeah.
When she's on the Justice League, she's really close friends with Martian Manhunter, who brings her back to life. And she teams up with Vixen to save Stargirl. So there's a lot of in-comics continuity potential if this character sticks around.
I thought the actress was great. I thought she was really good.
And I loved her relationship with Vibe, which is canon to the comics, that they have a little flirty. It was really fun to see Cisco.
It's not canon for them to have basically the same powers, but you know what?
No, that's true.
I'm okay with that.
She's more like invisibility-based powers. But I liked them together, and I want her to stick around because Cisco's not a sad sack when Gypsy is around.
No.
And I like that she is more capable with her powers. Like, her stealing, like, she doesn't steal the Speed Force, but she's able to stand up against speedsters.
Well, if you go out, what they did is they gave Vibe in the comic books, in the New 52 universe, he first gets introduced to this power that his vibrational powers can negate the Speed Force. He can stop the Speed Force flat, which is what I think they were showing in this. It's something that I've been saying for a very long time that I'm surprised they haven't done with Cisco, is the fact that Cisco's powers can stop the Speed Force.
And it makes both of them equally powerful to the speedsters, which is something that they struggle with, especially with their villain of the week characters, is how are you possibly going to beat a speedster?
Who can be anywhere at any time.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really cool way. And then seeing her vibe into the different universes was really
we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
But to see the power fully realized, I thought was awesome.
What did you think about this idea that HR has been rewriting the entirety of the Flash season 3, but with him as the hero, and broadcasting it to the multiverse?
10 out of 10, I would listen. I loved the way when he was reading it, because it was like a romance novel, like Francisco's flowing locks as he shook his head and laughed.
And then I showed up with the vortex manipulator.
I want to see that version of these stories. I loved it.
What do you think it's called? What do you think the name of it is?
The Life and Times of H.G. Wells, or H.R. Wells Across the Multiverse. It has to have a really epic nonsense title.
I think it's the Startling Scarlet Adventures of H.R. Wells.
There you go.
Yeah, very steampunky.
Yeah, I dug it though.
The whole Starlab team convinces Cisco that he has to practice, and Barry's like, I believe in you! But then HR reveals that Gypsy has never been beaten. Cisco says that he wants to be there for Harrison Wells because there has always been a Harrison Wells that has been there for him. That's the reason why he's doing this trial by combat. Iris then convinces Wally that he has to steal some files because her life needs to matter, and Iris does a little fake conversation while Wally steals the files, and Joe West almost dies because he thinks his daughter is pregnant. Cisco then trades against several cardboard cutouts of villains we've seen over the season, including King Shark, while HR reveals that Gypsy is at the waterfront and that him and Barry should go beat her to save Cisco. They show up there, Gypsy beats the Flash very easily, and Gypsy says that he has to face the law, and Gypsy's like, you know what? I'm going to fight Cisco, and I'm going to take HR's insurance to ensure that you're going to show up at this fight later down the road. Okay, first off, I want to talk about Iris's conversation with Joe West. One, she tricks her brother, although I did like the conversation where she said to Wally, she was like, we used to be a crime-fighting team in the other universe. Let's do this. In Flash, I hate that they call it Flashpoint. But then she goes to Joe West, and she basically does this conversation, and Jesse L. Martin does this probably the best performance he's had all season.
Oh, bless, he's so good in this episode.
He's like melting because he's thinking that she's like, I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
He's like thinking that, like they're setting up the whole scene, and then she's like, is Barry a cat or a dog person? Oh wait, what do you think about, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more in the next part because we'll get to the climax of the storyline. What do you think about Iris being very pushy with Wally about this storyline?
I don't love it. I think Iris's whole arc through this episode is a little contrived and a little silly. She really puts herself and Wally in harm's way because she's like, well, I'm going to die in 4 months, so I'm not going to die right now. I understand the impetus for having this character do something. If I only have this much time, I want to do something significant. I just don't think it was executed as deftly as possible.
Also, the first bit of reporting we've seen her do all season.
Maybe ever since the Flash.
No. We've seen her do reporting before. This is the first time I think this season that she's actually been working for the paper.
But does she still work there?
We saw it in this episode.
Does she have this boss?
So,
but I mean, like it's something that has been not laced through continuity. So it feels like a sudden turn to suddenly focus a whole storyline on like, oh, Iris is a reporter. Remember, Iris is a reporter. She's a good reporter.
What did you think of the Cisco training montage, and also the fact that Barry and HR, Barry and HR, they go to confront Gypsy. Gypsy like
trounces them.
She kicks their ass,
like
so easily. And I actually like that because it fits in with Barry's character because, of course, like, as we saw at the beginning of the season, Barry at one point was just like, I'm going to rewrite reality just because.
If Barry thinks he knows better and Oliver does the same thing.
He always acts on it.
They'll do whatever they want.
I really did. I kind of thought that the Cisco training sequences could have been like better fleshed out. But like I said, I really did enjoy the jokes of seeing the cardboard cutouts of all Flash villains. And then also the idea that he popped out and then popped to the roof.
Yeah.
I really like that idea. What did you think of that?
I thought that the cardboard cutouts were like cute, and I would have written that in. But like realistically, if you're training as a superhero, cardboard cutouts aren't going to help you in the slightest.
Which of the team made those cardboard cutouts?
Cisco.
When did they have the time?
Cisco.
When did they have the time?
I don't know. He doesn't work all the time.
Cisco and Barry then have a small spout about why Barry doubts Cisco. And then Barry gets mad because he's like, look, Cisco, I can't get faster, so it's all on me. Ah! And he says he leans on the Flash team to help him make him faster. Julian comes up with a strategy because he notices that Gypsy jumps off the ground right before and after she portals, and they can use that. Kid Flash and Iris go to a warehouse to bust an arm dealer. Iris goes in alone, almost gets caught, and then she walks right up to a gun, certain she won't die. And then we cut to Joe getting mad because they compromised the whole Central City investigation. He gets mad at Barry for not being there, and Iris sees the Lego model and gets mad at Barry because she's like, why are you the only person that can save lives? And she's really breaks down because she's like, I need to make sure that I make a mark on this life. Now, up until this point, until that final line, I was very like, this storyline of Iris's was not gelling for me. But when she brought up the line about her mom, which again is a thing that happened last season, it should still be a very significant wound for them.
I agree.
It's less than a year.
Yeah.
Still been less than a year. Once she said that, it gelled for me. That storyline, and to be honest with you, I kind of think it might have been Candace Patton's possibly best scene on the show to date, because I thought when she said that line and she was like in tears and she said that to Barry, I was like, wow, that's the first time I feel a real moment from this character. Like that is like a piece of reality that they put in the Flash. What did you think?
It just makes me nervous that this is now going to give Iris carte blanche in everyone else's eyes to like kind of do whatever she wants and be really reckless, which to me in the CW verse is just like a step away from making her a superhero.
Well, let me ask you this. Okay, so I see your point. Let me couch it this way. Okay, so she walked up to that gun because she was trying to use the logic that she's like, if Barry sees me in the future, that means I can't die now. I think they're going to play with that some more.
I agree, but I think
that's what you don't want them to do?
I don't. I think doing that is, like, to me, very against this version of Iris West.
Okay.
And I don't like it because, to me, if I'm living in the reality of the show, it puts an undue stress on Wally.
But that's the point.
I didn't like it. I thought that scene was really cheesy and really poor. I didn't like that scene at all. And then they don't even resolve it. They just hard cut away to Joe yelling at them. I didn't like those two scenes back to back.
I liked it too, but that's how you create the drama.
I think the culmination of it, in like the scene where you're talking about where she's crying, I thought that was very well done. But I thought it was kind of sloppy up to that point.
I'm very interested in this storyline, and I'm very interested to see them play this because again, it goes in the thing that I talked about on the DC TV recap last week. This idea of how far can you push fate? How far can you push it? Because can Iris die next week if we've seen her in the future? The answer for me would be no, but then the rest of the characters are not. They're gonna freak out. Like that's great drama. I like that a lot. And actually, to be honest with you, this might be Iris's best storyline she's had so far.
I guess I'm just more concerned about Wally's mental health than Iris is.
Wally needs something. Because what they're going to do with Wally, and I have no doubt about this, is they're going to give Wally this worry like Barry has this worry.
Yeah.
Because right now, Wally's all carefree, like, oh, look, I'm taking pictures with cheerleaders. And Wally really needs to be like, oh my God, my sister's going to die.
I think they slammed that home with his final moment with Barry, which I know we're going to get to.
Yes. Then Gypsy and Vibe face off, and for the very first time, Vibe shows up in a costume that looks very close to the comic books, and Gypsy says that they have to kill each other, and may the best Vibe win. They then begin to portal each other and run out of breath and go all over the place, and they appear on Earth 2, and then they show up on Supergirl's Earth, which is Earth 38, and Miss Tessmacher sees them. They are in Old Cat Grant's office. Then they land on a lava planet, and we find out that Gypsy is undefeated, and she says to him that his fear holds him back. They go back to regular Earth Prime, and she tries the portal, he blasts her in midair, and wins. She says her life is forfeit, and he says, I'm not going to kill you, and please, call me Vibe. All right, not only was this sequence flippin' awesome, I thought it was really cool. I was really surprised that we hopped up on Supergirl's Earth.
The lava planet, I had like mad Revenge of the Sith flashbacks.
Mustafar?
And then
they went to Mustafar.
She's like, oh, like your fear holds you back. And I'm like, this is so Jedi right now.
But let's talk about this because he's finally wearing the Vibe costume. It looks really close to the comic books.
Look great.
The jacket looked great. Mm-hmm. Like, we've been waiting on this moment for 3 years. It finally appeared. And I want to say it did not disappoint for me. Did it disappoint for you?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I think he takes her down a little quickly, a little conveniently.
True.
Like, oh, she's off the ground. Okay. But it's a really nice moment for him too to not kill her.
Yes.
And again, I just hope it sets up more for these two characters because the fight was cool, the effects were cool, and the story possibilities are cool that come out of this end sequence.
Well, think about. We'll talk about that later. Gypsy is not done with this show.
She's in your predictions?
Oh yes, she is.
Ooh.
Yeah. Gypsy then reveals that she has to go back to Earth 19 and then tell the Earth 19 government that she killed H.R. Wells, and H.R. can never go back to Earth 19. She then leaves with a whole bunch of coffee and almost kisses Vibe as she vibes away. Barry reads Iris's article about Kid Flash and he really likes it, and then we see H.R. continuing to write while Cisco interrupts him, telling H.R. that he has accomplished plenty. H.R. thanks him for his life, and then H.R. asks him to tell him about the other Harrison Wells. And then one day, H.R. hopes to be the one to save Cisco's ass. At the very final scene, we see Wally running in circles several times. Barry talks to Wally, and Barry tells Wally that he needs him to save Iris. Okay, we get a nice little beat for the HR. We get a nice little beat with Gypsy going away. HR is never going back, so I guess HR is stuck on Earth Prime forever. We'll see. But the more important thing, let's talk about this. Barry walks into the speed lab. Barry's like, Wally, I need you to save Iris. I obviously think, and let's see if you agree, that they are going off the graph that Wally's speed curve, his speed increase, is much steeper.
Which they've said almost every episode since Wally's become a full-fledged speedster.
Yeah, they're like, you're almost as fast as you've increased your speed faster.
Exponentially faster than Barry did at this point in his development.
So I think Barry's like, I'm gonna train you to be faster than me because you can get there. You can bridge the gap of 0.21 seconds. Here's the problem with this. Essentially, Wally's powers come from the Philosopher's Stone, which is part of Savitar. Don't you think Savitar could just be like, whoop, your speed powers are gone?
I think that's going to be very conveniently forgotten. Mm-hmm. Or I think what's going to happen is in a scene or a version of that reality that we haven't seen yet, Wally's going to go and he's going to somehow collide with Savitar. You know, Wally's going to be responsible for taking down Savitar, and then through that, he's going to cement, you know, like the Philosopher's Stone with him so he'll never, ever lose his powers. I don't see that being a complication. I see more of the complication being like Barry not being able to handle him being the one to save Iris.
Okay.
I see more an internal conflict. But I like this because sometimes you get weird Wally West storylines where he's not as fast as some of the other speedsters. So I like now that Barry's like, you have the potential to be faster than me. Please do this for me and please do it for your sister.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, so now let's give a rating to this episode of The Flash based on 1 to 5 lightning bolts, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. Ashley, what would you give episode 11 of season 3 of The Flash?
I think episode 11 of season 3 of The Flash is probably my favorite of the season so far.
All right.
I really like it. I really like Gypsy, even though she must have terrible coffee breath based on what we saw.
She loves the coffee.
So I am going to give it 5.
That's my impression of Gypsy.
5 lightning bolts out of 5.
5, and you didn't like a lot of part of this episode.
I just didn't like the 2 scenes.
Okay, all right.
The gun was silly. It was silly. How about you?
Well, I love finally getting to see Vibe suit up. I love him kind of accepting a superhero identity. I hope we see it in Central City. Gypsy was way better than she had any right to ever be. So good. The actress was great, and the Iris scenes actually had a point to them. It's very interesting because I'm noting that we have had very close ratings on almost every episode this season. I'm giving this 5 lightning bolts out of 5.
Perfect 10.
I really like this episode a lot. I thought this was a great episode of, I'm going to call it Vibe, the Vibe Show.
I would watch that.
All right. Now let's talk about predictions for The Flash going forward based on what we saw in this episode. Ashley, you got any predictions for the future of The Flash?
I do have predictions for the future of The Flash. My prediction is that we talked a lot last week about how I think that Julian and Caitlin are going to go off and be evil couple together.
Yes.
And so that is going to leave a void on the team, which hopefully they won't fill with Iris. Hopefully they will fill with Gypsy instead. And I think you are going to see a big throwdown between evil couple and good vibe couple in the finale. And I would also really like to see that. So that's why I'm predicting that that's what's going to happen.
Interesting.
What do you think is coming down the pipe? I know you alluded to it a little bit earlier in the episode.
All right, we're going to get complicated, kids. Get ready.
Woo!
So, we saw in this episode, Gypsy can stop a speedster, can freeze them. I think Vibe is also going to get that power. Mm-hmm. I think they're immediately going to be, well, if I can just freeze Savitar, he can't kill Iris.
It's true.
He's going to find out that Savitar is stronger than him. We need both of them to vibe and stop Savitar. We're going to get even more complicated.
Oh, I love this prediction.
Okay? So I think we're going to eventually go to both Vibesters freezing freezing Savitar in place. And I think they're going to say something like, Savitar is so powerful, we can only hold him for like 0.35 seconds
yeah,
or something like that.
Slightly longer than they need.
But luckily, Wally will be faster than that at that time. So what they will do is they will freeze Savitar, Wally will run in, grab Iris, and Iris will either be replaced with a time remnant of Iris.
A la last season.
Something, I don't know about that. Or HR's gun on the rooftop projects some sort of solid hologram of Iris to make Savitar believe that he still killed Iris. That way, and since this is all happening in like 0.35 seconds, the future that Barry saw can still happen exactly the way it's supposed to.
And you knew that it was eventually going to be revealed through moving the camera ever so slightly that everyone is in that park scene.
Oh, every single character of The Flash is there. Even
I'm sure Joe is there somewhere too.
Joe's over there still thinking about Iris having a baby.
Yeah.
You know?
Man, that scene was so good.
But that's it's going to take both of the Vibesters to stop Savitar.
That's so cool.
And they're going to be integral to the plan.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, let us know down in the comments which prediction you think is right. And also, don't forget to go check out our first comic book miniseries, JupiterJetComic.com. It's really cool. A girl with a jetpack. Go check it out. Lots of cool gifts. And what else should they do?
Make sure you click subscribe.
That's right. Don't make us vibe your asses.